Welcome to Female Fluence. We are a place of women empowering women. This is a safe environment where females are not judged nor afraid to flourish. My goal is to help you live an energized life of balance, whether as a mom, a wife, or in your profession. It is time to have self-worth and self-compassion. Live in the present moment and surround yourself with only healthy connections. So join me, Promash Shua, a woman empowerment life coach, an educator, and a mother of three, to help take you on a journey of true identity and inspiration. The term midlife crisis is almost a cliche, yet it's a natural phenomenon that affects both men and women, generally between the ages of 45 to 55. During this period, individuals may experience significant changes, including hormonal shifts, children leaving for college, caring for aging parents, and the normal aging process. Hormonal changes play a crucial role in midlife transitions. Lower levels of testosterone and estrogen can lead to fatigue. For women entering the premenopausal phase, age around 40 brings unpredictable hormonal fluctuations that gradually decrease over time. These changes can cause symptoms such as hot flashes, night sweats, emotional instability, all impacting sleep, mood, and energy levels. Menopause is a highly personal experience with symptoms varying widely among women. Unfortunately, it's often unfairly stigmatized and seen as a period of decline, affecting how women perceive their worth in society. If you suspect you are experiencing a midlife crisis, evaluate your physical and emotional well being. Focus on the aspects that you can actually control. Prioritizing your health can provide a sense of empowerment. Begin by checking your hormone levels, exercise regularly, and maintain a healthy diet. Additionally, seek advice from a doctor who specializes in hormone therapy for personalized guidance, like my guest today. Dr. Salome Masghati, a gynecologist specializing in minimal invasive surgery. She has always been passionate about women's health. She doesn't look at symptoms alone. She delves deeply into each patient's story and journey. She aims to provide comprehensive care that considers the whole person, not just the symptoms. By addressing the fundamental causes of health problems, Dr. Masghati strives to achieve lasting and meaningful health outcomes for her patients. Welcome, doctor, to my show. Welcome to Female Fluence.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your comprehensive journey of healing and self-discovery, the root cause that led you to take a more holistic approach because of your personal health crisis.
Yes. I went to medical school in Austria and Vienna, but I was born in Iran. So in Iran, there's a little bit of Oriental medicine and a lot of natural medicine. So I grew up with a lot of that and I was always interested in it. But I went to traditional medical school, came to the US, did my residency, and did fellowship to be a surgeon for female pelvic surgeries. And during that time, I suffered a lot from fatigue and depression and anxiety and sleep problems. And a lot of it had to do with the rhythm and the time that we had to spend at the hospital and the rhythm of our workflow and, working 80 hours or more at the hospital and doing, intense surgeries, a lot of stress and a lot of responsibility. But some of it also, little did I know, was already undergoing some hormone changes.
Mm.
Coming out of fellowship, COVID happened, and I opened my eyes to a whole different world of holistic medicine during that time because I was looking for more answers to help people during that time. And so that all coincided with my own health journey. I figured out over the last few years that I've been suffering from autoimmune thyroid disease, Hashimoto's, possible mold and heavy metal toxicity, premature, ovarian aging or menopause at a younger age. And so I've just been really interested in hormones and everything myself because of my own hormone journey. And I'm still figuring things out. It's super exciting because still so much to learn. And combining that with functional medicine, with testing for nutrients and vitamins and other cofactors, I'm hoping that I can help women to my best abilities.
That's an incredible journey, and I'm glad that you were able to get some answers to solve your own health problems. So let's talk about Ozempic. Some argue that establishing healthy habits, because I mean that's what we want to do, is through the supplements, diet, hormone balance, lifestyle changes, is a more sustainable solution to weight loss. Because I'm sure you have a lot of women, especially going through those stages that we all love going with midlife, is the weight change and we want to lose weight. With that, you know, is it more sustainable solution for weight loss than using Ozempic as a quick fix? Because concerns about Ozempic include the lack of long-term data, right? We don't have enough information, the necessity of lifelong use, and the potential risk of thyroid cancer. So I just was curious to see, what do you think about this? Because I'm sure people come to you with all these, weight loss problems, not losing proper weight.
I believe there is a distinction to be made about between Ozempic, the one that you get as a trademark through regular doctors for diabetics, which is produced by, big pharmaceutical companies, and the compounded Ozempic, semaglutide, which can be given in smaller doses. A lot of us in the functional medicine world have found out that there is a lot of benefits of these medications beyond weight loss when they're given in more microdosing type of effects or smaller
Mhm.
doses. So a lot of those side effects that are described in the studies can be mitigated. What are those side effects? So these GLP agonists, which is what these compounds are, semaglutide, tirzepatide, or they're called Ozempic or Wegovy, and there's other ones coming out. They are GLP agonists or incretin mimetics, and they're basically our own body makes them. After we eat, we secrete that, and they kind of have effects on the insulin production and our blood glucose, and as such regulate our energy metabolism, and can regulate how much we store fat, how we metabolize
Mhm.
glucose. When people have disturbances in that, they can benefit from a little bit of aid. Now, what would cause those disturbances? So, our modern lifestyle, we are bombarded with processed foods,
Yeah.
processed sugar. We have a sedentary lifestyle. Even if we think we work out and we weight lift or whatever, people are quite active. We don't move the rest of the day because we use our car everywhere in the
Yeah.
United States. I mean, I grew up in Vienna. I would bike everywhere, or we would walk everywhere. We only used public transportation. So people were just generally more mobile there. So we didn't have such a sedentary lifestyle. And so you combine the sedentary lifestyle with the poisons that we are presented in our food and all the chemicals in our environment. There's a lot of disruption of our natural, gut health and insulin metabolism. In addition, we are lacking some co-nutrients that we need, certain B vitamins, chromium, some elements and minerals that we need to actually process sugar better. So if you add that to the gut inflammation, some people just, despite their best efforts, need some help with
Right.
that.
Of course. Of
Um,
course.
so there are supplements you can use, and there is obviously lifestyle changes you have to implement. You are not going to get anywhere if you sit on a couch, eat terrible diet, and then you inject those medications. But if, let's say, you do all of that, you build muscle, you eat enough protein, you move enough, and you take the supplements that can help with your gut health, and you take enough fiber through vegetables, you have the rainbow diet, you work on your gut health, and you even work on your hormones because those
Mhm.
can affect your glucose metabolism, but you still can't lose weight. There's a stubborn weight. There is obviously an option for some people to use those medications. I would definitely recommend you do it with under the guidance of someone very experienced. There's a lot of telemedicine companies, so they don't spend time explaining things to you, and they don't monitor labs. If I
Right.
prescribe them, I do them in small doses, and I always monitor thyroid levels, um, liver enzymes, pancreatic enzymes, and some inflammation markers for people. And I monitor the symptoms. I follow up with them quite regularly, and I order a thyroid ultrasound. In the studies, in the rat studies or mouse studies, they found some increased risk of medullary thyroid cancer, but that hasn't been shown in humans.
Okay.
But we haven't had these medications for long enough, so we are going to wait for long-term studies on that. But they have already been prescribed in thousands of people. No risk of that. But the things that really have been described in humans is risk of bowel obstruction, gastroparesis, meaning slowing down of the digestive system, gallbladder issues, kidney stones. And that's because if you give someone who has an unhealthy terrain any type of medication and you exacerbate some underlying issues, that's going to lead to problems. That can even happen with supplements. So people should definitely make sure they're the right candidate for that under the guidance of the right doctor. But under the right guidance, there are some people who propagate using microdosing of that. I will give you an example. I had a patient who has been battling IBS with the diarrhea form. IBS is inflammatory bowel disease, but it's not Crohn's or colitis. It's more like a functional bowel disease
Right.
where they don't really find structural changes in the gut. But people have either diarrhea or constipation. And she had the diarrhea form. She said she hasn't been able to do anything for that despite treating SIBO, supplements, and everything. And the first time she's actually had some relief is with the low dose semaglutide. So she has been using it to her advantage with the slowing down of the digestive system. And I've had other patients who experience just generally less inflammation, less edema, just inflammation itself is going down. So maybe down the line, we'll find out it will be helpful in autoimmune diseases. We already know it's helpful for cardiovascular disease, you know. So there is a lot of benefits besides weight loss with these medications. I think we'll still have a lot of studies come out. And with anything in the wrong hands for the wrong people, there can be
Yes.
complications.
Right. That's true. I think so. Realistically, you're saying small dosages, and that make sure that you are under like working with a doctor specifically and
Yes.
being guided to make sure that everything that you're doing is safe for your body and
Yes.
measuring it. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Um, Now my next question is about aluminum-free deodorants. I know they're because I hear so much from different people, like, oh my gosh, don't use it, don't have your kids use it, and then you go to Target. And it's like there's like only one section with the aluminum free, and there's like 50 regular ones. So I just want to kind of understand possible health risks of us, associated with using these that have aluminum, and why aren't people really aware? And they're just being sold everywhere, in the market.
Some people will always ask for large randomized trials or epidemiologic studies to be convinced by anything. There is none for such for aluminum deodorants, but there are some case studies. And there was also a study where they did biopsies of breast tissue in women who underwent mastectomy for breast cancer.
Mhm.
When they did biopsies, they measured the aluminum content, and they found that most of the aluminum content was in the outer upper area quadrants of the breast tissue, which is the first area that anything that you put in your armpits would get to through the bloodstream
Oh,
and the lymphatic drainage there. So they found that concentration to be higher there, and they assumed that could be a correlation with aluminum perspirants. And then there has been some case studies reporting that too, that some women, for example, if they use it only on one side and they develop breast cancer on that side. So there's been some studies like that. You'll never get all the proof to completely prove something like that because you would need large scale randomized trials for that.
right.
But what you can assume is that aluminum is a metal that will accumulate in fatty tissue. And it can be anything that you apply to your skin. And this is something that I had to learn the hard way. Anything you apply to the skin, it doesn't matter, it's on your face, on your arm, anywhere, has systemic absorption. And in some areas more than other. It depends on how much blood flow there is, how much muscle tissue there is, and how quickly it can get to your venous blood flow and your lymphatics. But anything you put on your skin can affect you. We know that from sunscreen. We know that some sunscreens, when they have chemicals in them, there have actually been some association with melanoma or some cancers. People
Mm.
actually assume that the chemicals in them are not so good for us. In general, I would say if you're the kind of person who needs to wait for the FDA or CDC or large scale studies to tell you something to be convinced, you're probably not going to get that. But if you're someone who's just critical and understands that there's a whole different type of money behind pushing certain products that might not be as healthy for us, that the regulations on certain things are more lax in the United States than in other countries, for example,
Yes.
Europe. And if you understand that and you just want to be proactive about your own health, I would say use aluminum free. There are some charcoal based one, mineral based one, or simply make your own magnesium spray where you can take magnesium flakes, mix it with water. There's recipes online, and just make a spray, and it's a really great perspirant. It might not have a deodorant in it, the perfume with it, but that actually we're assuming that that's also not so great to be exposed to the perfumes either. So anything that's a fragrance is also not so healthy for us because those are called endocrine disruptors. and we absorb them, and they can impact our hormones as well. So you have two things in
Oh
those
my good. So
deodorants.
do we now
Yeah.
have to check on which perfume, as far as even the perfume goes, like what we're putting on, or
To be honest,
that's a risk?
if you're someone who's trying to clean up their environment and you want to just do things as holistically as possible, without obviously, you don't want to stop enjoying life. But there
Right.
is some data to believe that some of, the fragrances that are around us in candles and perfumes can actually be endocrine disruptors. I actually never knew how highly inflammatory they were to my brain until I developed mold and I became highly sensitive combined with my mercury toxicity. So I can't tolerate perfumes anymore because my brain has become so sensitive to those fragrances. But there is, if we were to measure it, potentially a risk for endocrine disruption, thyroid disruption,
Oh
things
my
like
gosh.
that. So if you want to be as natural as possible, maybe look
I
into.
love my flavored candles. Like always, I turn them on. It's relaxing, like vanilla. So now I'm like, okay, I got to think about this, or
Oh,
so many
Pearl,
things to think about.
Miss Pearl, you do want to enjoy life, and
Yeah,
if the candle brings you so much peace and calm that it relaxes your nerves, I'm not telling you to take. I'm not trying to take away things from you, but if someone asks me, Dr. Mascati, if I want to be as clean as
as
possible,
possible.
then I
But
will
what
tell
what
them.
about what about now? You mentioned, not to get off track, but you mentioned sunblock. What should we look at when we look at the label to make sure that it's like a very safe sunblock that we're putting on?
So zinc oxide is fine. So if you just make sure it has main ingredient zinc oxide and then maybe has something as a carrier, basically would be like zinc oxide as the main ingredient and nothing of the benzoate kind or any kind of alcohol or chemicals added to it. Okay. So some have this avobenzone or ozobenzone. They have all these ingredients that are added. I might not pronounce them right, but those are the chemicals you want to
Okay.
avoid. You want to have zinc oxide, and the pure ones have that. And you can even make your own paste actually if you combine it with the right carrier oil. And then some people believe that you don't even, some people, I'm not saying everyone, you apply sunscreen because of photo aging, but in actuality, you're blocking your sunlight from, the vitamin D production in your skin. So some people believe just exposing themselves slowly to the sun throughout the year so that their skin gets adapted, and then avoiding sun at the highest level of sun during noon, but getting some sunlight on their skin is actually good. So they don't even carry any or wear any sunscreen. Now, the dermatologists believe that you should wear it because of photo aging, like if you're
Mhm.
trying to avoid wrinkles. Sure, then I would use definitely something that is zinc oxide based. If anybody has questions about purity of products, one website, even though it gets some criticism, that can be used is EWG, the Environmental Working Group, and it
Okay.
will tell you what sunscreens and what makeup products are rather clean. Again, they are biased too. Nothing is 100%.
Right, right.
But learning to read ingredients, avoid any sunscreen with an ingredient list more than 5 ingredients. I mean, doesn't need to have anything more than 2 or 3 ingredients in there. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Mhm,
That's very helpful. Thank you.
mhm,
So many teen girls with severe acne or irregular menstrual cycles are prescribed birth control pills. Now, I always, hear about this and I just wonder, is that safe for them? If like a girl is taking birth control pills from like the
mhm,
age of 16 and they
mhm.
start so young and they're going to use it long term, what are
Yeah.
all the risks that involve? Because a lot of doctors are prescribing that now.
Yeah, I was told to just prescribe them left and right. I was happy to even understand what type of 4 generation of birth control pills to understand the differences in them. And I was focused on treating symptoms. Oh, you have, bleeding in between. Let me give you this one. Oh, you have
Yeah.
the, let me give you. I never learned even like the side effects or the long-term effects of them. And it was outside of medical school that I had to research it. There's more and more data coming out. You will hear more and more people being critical of them because there's some studies coming out showing that there is effects on brain for people. We know that women that are on birth control compared to women who are not on birth control, they might actually experience differences in how much anxiety they have, how much depression they have, and that risk is higher specifically in the developing brain in younger women. Okay, we also know that there was one study that showed that in terms of partner selection, their taste changed while on birth control, and they were more attracted to less masculine men because it suppressed their own ovulation and their own testosterone and estrogen production. So they were attracted to a different type of man. Now, these studies, I mean, I'm not going to try to extrapolate that for the general population, but things that we do know is about 20 to 30% can experience anxiety or depression. We know that it can affect nutrient absorption in the gut. We know that there has been cases reported, and there is studies to find that it can increase the risk of inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, so some autoimmune diseases like MS, lupus, Crohn's disease, and lichen sclerosis, which is an autoimmune condition of the skin around the vulva. It can also change the clitoral sensation and the clitoris in young women. So to the point where their desire goes down and their orgasm or the abilities go down. It can cause vaginal dryness for women. And it can also lead to a high risk of osteoporosis while women are on it because it suppresses your own ovulation. It also, and I think that is not being talked about enough, especially this is why on social media, I always talk about how much I don't love giving it to middle-aged women because we are already at high risk of inflammation and breast density and imbalances with progesterone in our late 30s and 40s. Now you're adding birth control that suppresses that further, and it increases breast density and inflammation potentially. It could potentially increase your risk of breast cancer. And in studies, they saw that there was a risk increase between 7 to 20%, up to 20% for breast cancer while women were on birth control. Now, that risk went down once they came off the birth control pill. So it was a transitional risk.
That is a lot of risks for birth control. I think
Yeah.
like 35, 40 things that can go wrong. Wow.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah. And
anything
then
positive about being on it?
and I wanted to add, there was one more because a lot of arguments for it is like, oh, breast cancer, but it also reduces the risk of endometrial cancer or ovarian cancer and colorectal cancer. And that is true. That has been shown in the studies. But also natural progesterone can do that as well. So do we really need to be on a synthetic hormone that is an endocrine disruptor in a way to get that effect? And it does increase the risk of cervical cancer as well. That I didn't know up to just a few years ago. That it can increase it up to 60% if someone has been using a birth control 5 to 9 years. And that's a lot of increase because it stimulates proliferation of the cervical cells, and it also makes you more susceptible to HPV virus. It just changes the environment of the cervical mucus. Our bodies are meant to be resilient. Our immune system is meant to be strong. But when we add something synthetic, we could potentially tamper with that. Now, this is a very difficult discussion to have. And even in social media, I get attacked by women who believe that I'm not feminist enough by criticizing something that is offering birth control to people. All I'm trying to say is I'm just trying to bring awareness to people and say, listen, that might not be your only option.
Right. There's other options out there.
Yeah,
Of course.
exactly.
Of course.
But
It's just, and you have to educate yourself for everything because
yes,
a lot of us don't. We go to the doctor and it's like, okay, this is what you have to do, and we just take it. So
yeah, but if you're on it and it works for you, then stay on it. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from the treatment that works for them, but I'm trying to give a voice to those who are not heard, because there's a lot of women who come to me, a lot of young girls, and they feel hurt for the first time because the GYNs did dismiss them that they could potentially experience anxiety and depression from the birth control. And I listen to them and I take it seriously. So I'm just trying to give a voice to those who are not heard, but I'm not trying to dissuade anybody who is very in love with the treatment to change it up.
of
I don't
course.
like to operate on fear levels. Yeah.
Right,
So
right. No, I appreciate your honesty. Thank you. Now, can you discuss the importance and benefits of progesterone and explain its pivotal role in maintaining overall health and our vitality?
everything in the body is in balance. So when we are in our reproductive years, which is ideally what nature wanted us to have, it wanted us to have both estradiol and progesterone work in conjunction. In the first half of the cycle, we mostly have estrogen being active. This is when we are becoming more of the go-getters and we are more motivated and we exercise differently, and we are also having higher testosterone levels around our ovulation. We have more libido. And in the second half, it's all about preparing us for pregnancy, right? So progesterone comes in, calms us down and prepares the lining and just smoothens everything out and just calms the brain, and we sleep differently and we have more appetite. It's all in a beautiful symphony. Progesterone cannot shine without estrogen, and estrogen cannot shine without progesterone. We have progesterone in different tissues. We have it in vessels, we have it in bones, we have it in the brain and kidneys. So progesterone can have so many benefits outside of just protecting the uterine lining and shedding the uterine lining every month. We definitely need both of these hormones together, which one is proliferative and builds, and the other one stimulates apoptosis and cell death, so we can regenerate and build new cells every month. And so progesterone has is equally important and just as important as estrogen, but they both need each other to be fair. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Now let's talk about menopause, the big M word, right? That everyone is always fearful of. What are some silent symptoms of menopause that are often overlooked or not talked about?
I can tell you from my own experience, I felt withdrawn from like emotionally, like withdrawn from things. I lost my joy. I was just indifferent. That's not me, you know. I'm definitely not that kind of person. I didn't enjoy being social. And I just generally felt meh, you know, and it was just not
Kind of
depressed. It
like
was
jaded
joyful.
about life, like not
Jaded
really
and just no
caring. Yeah.
hope. Yeah. And then another early symptom that a lot of women might not know about, getting up and peeing more frequently is
Mm.
definitely a sign of estrogen going down, even before you have vaginal dryness. And then obviously libido can go down. Skin can become more dry. Ear can become itchy. Eyes become itchy. Definitely a lot of the emotional components, like feeling more overwhelmed easily, like stress overwhelms you. You just don't want to take on the same things. Like I lost a lot of ambitions. I'm like, how the heck did I make it for residency and fellowship? Like I was such a different person. And now I'm like, I just want peace. Leave me alone. Don't overwhelm me. And so there's just so many components to that. And but then obviously the physical part as well. Like, you know, you start feeling there is a little bit more of a stubborn belly fat that comes on. Your appetite changes. I was extremely fatigued. Like I just couldn't get up and get anything done. I didn't feel motivated to work out, and then sleep was terrible. So I say that because everybody thinks hot flashes and night sweats, and that's not for everyone.
Right. That's what I said. Like you just listed a whole but
Yeah.
another huge list. And that's what you just hear. It's like hot flashes all the time, right?
I have a lot of women who come to me where 1 or 2 years before menopause, before the last period, they are already having these heart palpitations. I think what's super important, and we're going to get there more and more, is we're going to understand we need to replace hormones way before the last period hits because these
Mm.
changes on the cardiovascular and brain changes, they already happen in perimenopause. So in the years before menopause. So we can't wait until a year. The official definition of menopause is wait a year after the last period before you give someone, you know, the diagnosis. Well, that's already kind of
Late.
late because
Yeah.
you're already having those changes happen on a cardiovascular level, on the bones, on the brain. That's another thing I was going to tell you, Pearl. Memory. Oh my God, like not recalling where I put something. And I have ADHD, so I'm very serotonin dependent and dopamine dependent. Estrogen is very important for that. And my ADHD got worse. Like I couldn't get anything done. I procrastinated everything and I forgot everything. So everything that was like the worst traits I had were exacerbated.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So maybe it's dependent for everyone. It's different for everyone. My mom went through it like a breeze and she never was on hormones and she never felt anything, but that's everyone is different. Like my
Everyone's
brain
different.
is very hormone sensitive and I know that I needed them. But we also have to talk about the silent ones, the ones that don't have any symptoms. You should still get your hormones checked because the more and more we're finding out, even if you don't have symptoms, those changes are happening on the
Yeah.
organ level. So you still might benefit
You
from
still need to
discussion.
fix them. Yeah.
Yep, you might still
That's a very
benefit
good
from
point.
talking.
That's a
Yeah.
very good point. A lot of many middle-aged women are at least lately diagnosed with autoimmune diseases. What do you think is the cause, and are we more prone to developing autoimmune markers during menopause? Is that another thing that can?
Yes, because both estrogen and progesterone are anti-inflammatory, and as an estradiol in the right form, especially when it's not given orally, but you know, topically, so
Mhm.
as a cream or injection or different forms, has very anti-inflammatory effects. Okay, because if you give it orally, a lot of it gets converted into estrone, and estrone is one of the estrogens that's more pro-inflammatory. But you want more of the estradiol, and then some people like estriol because it's anti-inflammatory, but in the way I was taught, it actually weakens the estradiol effect. So estradiol is the main one you want to go with. And then progesterone is equally important because it has reduces autoimmune conditions. It helps the immune system function better. And then testosterone has actually immune suppressive effects because they're all neurosteroids. And then testosterone really can also help with autoimmune conditions. If there's a woman who can't have estrogen because she had breast cancer or she has some sort of contraindication to estrogen, she actually could qualify for testosterone. That could help her autoimmune condition as well. So all three hormones can be important and can have anti-inflammatory effects.
Okay. Now, why is recurrent UTI common too after menopause? And how is there
Yeah,
a way that we can avoid it? Because I hear a lot of, people just say, "Oh my God, I have it again."
yeah,
Like it's like every other week, it's just coming back.
yeah. Well, first we have to make sure we actually run cultures and it's actually a UTI and not a sensitivity of the tissue to the dryness or changes of the pH and causing something called interstitial cystitis or overactive bladder, which is a which is when the nerves of the bladder get sensitive from lack of estrogen. It's not necessarily an infection, but the brain bladder communication gets disrupted. And so they
Okay.
have to run to the bathroom more often, which is what I told you, like going at
Yeah.
night, like, that's a sign of that. And there are different ways to approach that with giving back estrogen, but there's also like localized therapies that I use in the office where we can do radio frequency therapy to help the nerves re-educate themselves, and we can also inject stem cells in there that can help the bladder. But the UTI thing has to do with the lack of estrogen, because estrogen has a positive effect on the pH and the milieu of the microbiome of the bladder. And the dryness alone and the lack of estrogen makes us more prone to the bacteria going up the pathway in the urinary tract and creating infections. So there was a really great study from 20 years ago. Just by giving women vaginal estrogen when they were in menopause, they decreased the UTIs by 60%.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So now many undergoing menopause hesitate to try hormone replacement therapy because they're concerned about cancer risks. Can you explain what this actually is? And is there any potential link to cancer? And do you recommend
Yeah.
it? Because I know that's something you know well about.
Probably it doesn't help that some women, when they get diagnosed with cancer and they go to the oncologist tells them, this is because you are on hormones. It doesn't help that we still have people that
Yes.
tell patients that. I believe most of this came from the Women's Health Initiative study in 2002, where they found that there was an increased risk of breast cancer, but that was in the group of women who were giving um, conjugated equine estrogen, which was Premarin, together with synthetic progestins. But in the Premarin alone group, there was no increased risk of breast cancer. And then since then, we have had multiple studies, and even before that, that never showed that estrogen alone increased breast cancer risk. So that thing that where we are scared of estrogen for breast cancer has never been shown in those large scale studies, but it seems to be the effect of the synthetic progestins adding to that. And there was another study that came out this spring, large Medicare study, women above 65, and still the same thing. Estrogen alone, no increased risk of breast cancer. In fact, it reduced other risks, mortality, risk of cardiovascular problems,
Mhm.
congestive heart failure, heart attacks, and dementia and bone. Bone is very important, bone health, osteoporosis, because a lot of women at older age, they don't even die from cancer or heart attacks. That could die from a fracture of the bone and then be bedridden
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
wither away. So it has all these benefits without showing that breast cancer is increased. So if a woman gets hormones, they definitely need to discuss their individual risk, obviously, and they need to monitor their breast health with some sort of imaging that the recommended one is mammogram. Mammogram can still not is not being replaced by anything else yet because it does detect calcifications early on. Some women like to do thermography and ultrasound. MRIs are great because no radiation, but not everybody can afford to get them. But
Hmm.
let's say your individual risk is low, and then you want to get it. Just know this, okay? There were studies that looked at women who developed breast cancer while on hormones. Well, those on hormones had better outcomes. So it tells
Okay.
us that there can be a protective effect. We actually believe that estradiol helps the tumor cells to stay together. And we don't think that it's the hormones that cause the cancer, is that there's stem cells with cancer that already are there, and then they can proliferate and they can hijack the hormones to grow, but it's the stem cells that are cancerous that cause the cancer to begin with. So if someone is on hormones and they develop breast cancer, statistically, they actually have better outcomes than if they were not on hormones. And then if you had breast cancer and you completed your treatment and you want to be on hormones, there is options for that. And then there's some good data that women can immediately be even placed on testosterone alone if they are estrogen receptor positive and they want some sort of hormones to help with their side effects of chemotherapy and hormone therapy. Because often they get placed on this really, really tough hormone inhibitors like aromatase inhibitors, so they develop a lot of withdrawal of hormones, and so they can be placed on testosterone. This is a very nuanced conversation. To summarize, I would say We don't have data to show that estrogen increases risk of breast cancer, and women who
Okay.
were on estrogen and developed breast cancer had better outcomes. And then women who had breast cancer and wanted some sort of hormone therapy, there is some options for them. And then women who have breast cancer that are not estrogen receptor positive, those cancers do not hijack the hormones to grow. So there's a lot of nuance to this.
Okay. Okay. That's
Mhm.
very interesting. So, I mean, menopause, it's a topic that's really surrounded by fear. What advice would you give to our listeners to just make peace with it? Discover that, okay, we have to like live our best life during and after menopause. It's not something that we have to be so fearful of.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's inevitable. It's a normal transition for everyone. I think it helps to be prepared, to know your hormone levels, to make sure your terrain is as healthy as possible. You work on your diet, you have a good exercise regimen, you work, on just healthy lifestyle habits. Don't overdo anything, work on your stress, and then just check your hormones and be prepared for it so that you can anticipate things and be ahead of the game.
Okay.
You don't have to wait until everything is terrible before you do something, because then you're
So
kind of trying,
prevention, right?
yeah,
Prevention is
prevention, because you're
better.
trying to catch up and you're always more in that fear, versus
Mhm.
prevention. You're just informed and knowledgeable. And if someone comes to me and says, I'm 23 and I want to know what my hormones look like, I'm like, yeah, let's test them. I will never say no to hormone testing. And then actually, I believe in the future, more and more, we will be going towards checking hormone levels in younger women so we know where their ideal hormone levels are, so that when they are in menopause, we can
It's
imitate that.
fluctuating. They can tell
Hmm.
better the changes.
Hmm.
That's actually
Yeah.
great. Yes. My other question was, what is mineral deficiency and how we can effectively rehydrate ourselves? Because I noticed too, like on some of your Instagram posts
Yeah.
that you were showing us that there was some things that we need to add to our coffee or juice to keep that deficiency, like to be rehydrated with our minerals.
Mean, plain water doesn't really cellularly hydrate us. It's not structured and it's not mineralized. I use an over-the-counter reverse osmosis, so it takes all the minerals away together with all the obviously chemicals that it is filtering for me. It takes the minerals away. We're not drinking, water from the glaciers that are coming down the
Yes, we're
waterfalls and
not.
being all structured and has all the, earth minerals in it. We're drinking really like terrible city water, and so we need to add electrolytes and minerals to our water just to hydrate ourselves better. It allows our body to function because our body needs certain vitamins and minerals to allow for the hormones to function, for all these messenger molecules, for our immune system, just for our blood flow, for everything. And then
So
we
that's
need,
something we should all be doing like as a family or at like this age as we're, in our
oh, I
midlife.
think everybody should do it, even
Okay.
children. Like, I would think that a lot of children that exhibit certain behavioral problems are probably having issues with certain vitamins, methylation, and some minerals, in addition to other things. But we have to understand we're bombarded with toxins. Everything is depleting us. The soils that we grow food in is depleted. Then everything is being sprayed. Like our fruit and vegetables don't have the mineral content that they used to, and the vitamin content. So we just have to add that. You can use something like humic or fulvic acid because it's like volcanic minerals. You can use trace minerals. You can use electrolyte powders. Make sure things are unsweetened and unflavored, and then you can go beyond that if you have concern for maybe mineral imbalances. There are people that are experts that work on hair tissue mineral analysis and specific mineral balancing programs for people, and I know that they can adjust a lot of those deficiencies for people. For me, like with my heavy metals, I'm actually looking into that to push the mercury out and things like that, because minerals can help push toxins out of your
Mhm.
body. Yeah. So there's a therapeutic dose and there's just a maintenance dose, like a basic one. And you can just do that with some trace minerals or some electrolytes. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. My last question. I know I've bombarded you with so many questions, but red light therapy I know has gained popularity. If you can just explain to our listeners what it is and how it works, and do you recommend it? Is it safe? Is it something that we should be doing?
Yeah, it's using light for therapeutic purposes of healing, deep tissue healing. It's called photobiomodulation. It functions on a certain wavelength of light that has those healing properties, and it can go deeper into the tissue and help with mitochondria and the cellular batteries, and then healing of the tissues, and can have calming effects on inflammation. So you can use it for multiple purposes. Like you can use it for use it for your eyes to help with eyesight. You can hold it over your thyroid to help with thyroid inflammation. You can use it over your breast to help with breast inflammation. You can use it over your whole body just after workouts or whatever, just to help with just deep tissue healing. A lot of people find it meditative because they can combine it with some breathing exercises or meditation. You can use it for hair growth, anything that increases blood flow and healing anywhere in the body. If you have joint pain, if you have inflammation, it can be
So
used for
no
that.
risks. It's more positive and helpful than anything. It's safe.
Yes, no risks unless you're using a bad device that hasn't been checked for EMF. Not that it's that risky either, but you don't want to
I mean, there's a lot out there in the market. How would we know like that the right one supposedly? Like what are we looking
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, you want to have vetted companies. The two that I work with, and I have discount codes for people too if they're interested, is MTech and Boncharge, and they're very known companies. MTech is EMRTAEK, and Boncharge is BONCHARGE. So I bought my red light bulbs from there. I bought my little red light device. I have the Firewave from MTech. And then I have a handheld from Boncharge that I can hold over my gums or over my eyes. So those two companies I like. There's many more, but I know these two are pretty vetted by much smarter people than me and some of my mentors. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much today, and I feel like our listeners as well, they're going to be listening to this episode and just taking notes. I have to go back and listen and take notes to everything that you've been teaching us. So realistically, as we age, our bodies and hormones undergo significant changes. However, this doesn't mean our quality of life has to decline. Some of us are currently experiencing menopause, while others may be anxiously anticipating it. It's important to remember that menopause is just another stage of life. Instead of fighting it, we need to embrace it and learn how to adapt. Maintaining mental health, a positive mind, exercising regularly, following healthy habits, and seeking professional advice are critical steps in navigating this transition successfully. Thank you for being a guest on Female Fluence. Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
It was a pleasure, fellow Persian lady, and wonderful speaking with you. And I hope the listeners, found it useful. And
I'm sure they will. And I will put all the links and your information on my show notes so that everyone can find you and get more information if they need to reach out.
thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Female Fluence on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you are in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Pearl Mashur. Until we talk next time.